So hello, in continuation for our discussion with state tax, we'll proceed to the what are the deductions from the gross estate. Now, so deductions are the amounts or items that the law allows to be deducted from the gross state to arrive at the net state. So same with the gross estate, the deductions are grouped into deductions allowed for resident or citizens and deductions allowed for a non-resident alien. So let's start with the resident, citizen, non-resident citizen, and resident alien residents. So RC and RA are allowed ordinary deductions and special deductions. So ordinary deductions include losses, indebtedness, taxes. So the losses, indebtedness, taxes includes casualty losses, claim against insolvent person, claim against the state, unpaid mortgage, and unpaid taxes. We also have transfer for public use and property previously taxed or vanishing deduction. Then we also have special deductions. No? So special deductions are standard deduction, the family home, the amounts received by heirs under RA 417, and share of the surviving spouse. So these are allowed deductions for RC, NRC, and RA. However, si NRA, they are allowed losses, indebtedness, taxes, or they're allowed claim against the state, claim against insolvent persons, and unpaid mortgage, pero subject to limitation. So, pag-compute niya is the gross state Philippines divide gross state world, no? So, times the world claim against the state, claim against insolvent person, and paid mortgage. So, yung deduction allowed niya. So, allowed siya ani, pero subject to limitation. We also have allowed siya of PPT or property previously tax for as long yung property nasa Philippines. Allowed din siya with a transfer for public use. Again, dapat ang property situated in the Philippines. And allowed din siya with net share of the surviving spouse, no? And then a standard deduction of 500,000. So you take note that these deductions are deductions allowed under green law. So let's discuss deductions one by one. So let's start with the ordinary deductions. So yung ordinary deductions, we have the casualty losses, no? So yung casualty losses, this includes losses due to fire, shipwreck, theft, robbery, or embezzlement. So, ang requisite niya, it must be incurred during the settlement of the state. So, yung settlement ng state, that's 1 year from the date of death. So, dapat yung losses, no, ma-incur siya during settlement or 1 year. And the loss should not be compensated by insurance. No? So, if the loss is compensated by insurance, hindi siya allowed na i-claim, no, as part of the deduction. However, if compensated siya by insurance, hindi the entire, no, so yung portion na biggie cover sa insurance ang deductible. Okay? And so I said kanina, the loss must occur not later than the last day for the payment of state tax. Okay? So the last payment for state tax is 1 year from the resident's death. Okay? So you have here, for example, no, among the properties included in the gross estate of Mr. Lawrence at the time of death was a 2-story commercial building with a fair market value of 6 million. During the settlement of the state and before the last day of paying the state tax, the said property was destroyed by a fire. The fair market value of the property at the time of that accident was 6.5 million. Assume that the property was insured for 5 million and the amount recovered from the insurance company is 4.5 million. Okay? So the amount of the deductible loss. Okay? So take note that for a loss to be deductible, dapat naasa gross state ang property. Okay? It should be, diba, the valuation should be fair market value at the time of death. Okay? So, ang since ang property na na-recover na insurance, so ang pwede rin mo i-claim na deduction is katong portion na wala na cover sa insurance. So it must be noted that nasa gross state ang fair market value of the property at the time of death, which is 6 million. I-deduct lang nimo ang katong amount recovered from the insurance company of 4.5 million. So ang allowed deductible loss nimo is 1.5 million. Okay? Yan. So let's proceed with claim against insolvent person. So these are receivables of the decedent on persons declared by the competent authorities as insolvent. So importante na ma-establish nato or ma-determine jud no that the debtor is insolvent. Okay? So ang requisite niya, dapat the full amount of receivables should be included in the gross state, or the value of the decedent's interest therein is included in the gross state, yung gross amount of the receivable. Then, magdeduct lang ka o katong portion na katong uncollectible. Okay? And then, the insolvency of the debtor is must be established. Okay? So, let's have a sample problem for that. Ito, Mr. Patrick, just before his death, has a total claim against a debtor of 2 million. One of the debtors, Mr. Patrick, has a claim of 500,000, has a total assets of 3 million and a total liabilities of 10 million. So, diba, makonsider niyo mo siya as insolvent if its assets is lesser than its liabilities, diba? So, yung assets 3 million lang, pero yung liability niya is 10 million. Okay? So, the court accordingly declared the said debtor insolvent. So, di ba? So, dapat ang insolvency dapat ma-establish. So, the claim against insolvent person as allowed deduction from the gross state would be, okay? So, dapat ang full amount of claim should be included in the gross state. So, apil sa gross state ang 500,000 na claim, no? Then, kung ano nimo ang portion na uncollectible. So, ang portion still collectible, diba? We have 500,000 na katong receivable nimo kay katong kay insolvent person times 3 million over 10 million. Ang 3 million is katong amount sa iyang assets, while ang 10 million is ang amount sa iyang liabilities. Kung gina-compute mo ang recovery percentage. So out of sa 500,000, napaka-recover na 30%, which is 150. So, ang portion na dili mo ma-claim is 350. Again, ang amount deductible is ang portion na dili ma-claim. If the entire receivable is dili ma-claim, no, then, or fully insolvent si debtor, then, include mo sa gross state at full, then, deduct mo siya in full. Okay? So, yun siya. So, let's have claim against the state. So, claim against the state is our financial obligation of the decedent prior to his or death and still enforceable at the time of death. So, yung requisite niya, the debt must be contracted in good faith, must be valid in law and enforceable in court, must have not been condoned, no, by the creditors, no, so pa siya gi-condone, or condemnation, no, must have not been prescribed kasi we have prescription as to the number of years, diba? Then dapat personal debt siya of the decedent existing at the time of his death. So, ang amount di mo na pwede i-claim, the amount of debt will qualify in the above requirements. Okay? Yan siya. Next would be the unpaid mortgage. So, these are amounts owed by the decedent supported with collateral and still outstanding at the time of death. So, lahi si claim against the state, lahi pa rin sa unpaid mortgage. Although, si unpaid mortgage are also liability, no? But, si unpaid mortgage, kumbaga, no, kung nakay nag-loan ka, no, himot ni mo collateral, are the, ang mga titulo sa real properties, yung mortgage, yung real properties, no? So, ang requisite niya, dapat the undiminished value, no, or the fair market value of the property mortgage undiminished with the mortgage should be included in the gross estate, no? And then it must be contracted in good faith and for an adequate and full consideration. So ang rule lang niya, dapat nasa gross state ang fair market value sa property, and then magdeduct lang ka, no, i-include lang sa deductions ang amount of the unpaid mortgage. No? So, let's have ito. Personal property with a cost of 400,000 and a fair market value of time of death of 900, but subject to a mortgage of 250. No? So, ang presentation niya, it should be included in the gross state at 900 at the fair market value time of death. Then, magdeduct lang ka, no, sa deductions of unpaid mortgage yung 250. So, hindi siya pwedeng i-net. No? So, although, by net, 650 siya, pero ang rules that nasa gross state, no, ang fair market value of the properties, magdeduct lang ka all deductions. Okay? Next, we have unpaid taxes. So, the taxes must have accrued as of the death of the resident, which were unpaid as of the time of death. So, the amount of taxes that accrued before the resident death, but not including, so, these are, unpaid taxes na dili ma-qualify as deduction. We have income tax on income earned after death, property tax that accrue after death, and state tax. Okay, so take note na ang unpaid taxes lang, ito lang nag-accrue after death. Okay? Nag-accrue before death, sorry. Nag-accrue siya before death. Okay, so yung income, yung taxes nag-accrue after death, hindi na subject for deduction for unpaid taxes. Okay? Yeah. Next, we have transfer for public use, no? So these are amounts of bequests, legacies, or devices, or to or for use of the government of the Philippines exclusively for public purpose. No? So these are donations nimo, donation mortis causa to the government, whether local or national. So ang requisite niya, given to the government of the Philippines, whether national or local, must be testamentary in character. So yun nga, dapat donation mortis causa siya, mag-take effect siya upon death. By way of donation, mortis causa executed by the decedent before his death and then exclusively for public purpose. So, ang amount deductible nimo, so dapat ang kanipong transfer public use na sa gross state. So, kung pila ang nasa gross state, mo po imong i-claim as deduction. So, amount of all bequests, legacies, devices, or transfer to or for use for the government of the Philippines or any of its political subdivision. Okay? So, ang amount na deductible kung pila ang amount na sa gross state, meaning pila ang fair market value of the property at the time of death. Next deduction, so medyo ang lisod computed na deduction is ang property previously taxed or vanishing deduction. So, ang vanishing deduction, ang purpose niya is to minimize the effects of double tax on the same property within a short period of time. No, kasi kumbaga ang vanishing deduction, these are deduction na sa property na na-receive nimo by way of gratuitous transfer, may it be donation or successions. It shall be noted that ang subject lang for vanishing deduction or katong na-inherit na property or na-donate mo na property or na-acquire siya gratuitously, no? Yan siya. Siyempre, kasi the moment you receive the property, nagbayad to state tax or donor's tax, diba? Then, and karon namatay ang resident, so magbayad na po siya og property, no? Magbayad na po siya og tax sa property, no? Or state tax. No? So, to minimize the effects niya, taxing the same property within a short period of time, then we are allowed to claim vanishing deduction. So, what are the conditions or requisites para makaklaim tang vanishing deduction? So, there is a property forming a part of the gross state of the present resident situated in the Philippines. No? So, meaning, ang subject lang to vanishing deduction is ang property situated in the Philippines. The present resident acquired the property by inheritance or donation within 5 years. So said kanina, ang subject lang to vanishing deduction are those na acquire nimo gratuitously, no, within 5 years. So the property subject to vanishing deduction can be identified as the one received from the prior resident, dapat same property, or from the donor, or can be identified as having been acquired in exchange for property so received. So the property acquired form part of the gross state of the prior resident or the taxable gift of the donor. And dapat ang state tax ato, no, or the gift tax, state tax if it's succession, gift tax if it's donation. On the gifts must have been paid in the state of the donor party resident have previously availed the vanishing deduction. Mean to say, once lang ta maka-avail of vanishing deduction. So if katong property na received nimo, nag-claim mo siyang vanishing deduction before, then di naka-allowed mag-claim ng vanishing deduction. Kaisa lang ta pwede mag-claim ng vanishing deduction for the same property. The property. Okay? So, we have here the percentage deduction of vanishing deduction. So, magdepende siya kung pila ka years. So, if not more than 1 year, ang rate is 100%. And ang 1 to 2 years, ang rate is 80%. 2 to 3 years, 60%, and 3 to 4 years, 40%, and 4 to 5 years, 20%. More than 5 years, wala na. Hindi na siya pwede i-claim as deduction. Okay? So, medyo dali lang i-remember, di ba? No, ang rates. So, ang procedures in computing vanishing deduction, so we have, you need to determine the initial value or the initial basis or the value taken by comparing the fair market value at the time of death, no? Then fair market value at the time of transfer, or fair market value sa present decedent o fair market value sa prior decedent or donor, no? So the lower of its value, so it's present market value sa prior present o fair market value sa pag-transfer sa imuha before, whichever is lower, no? From the initial value taken, deduct any mortgage or lien on the property. So, magdeduct ang mortgage paid, no? Kay, say for example, if the property received nimo appeal dito kay mortgage, then pwede nimo i-claim itong mortgage paid nimo. Where such mortgage or lien was deduction from the gross state of the prior decedent or gross gift of the donor. So, this is the initial basis, no? So, the initial value taken as reduced by step B shall be further reduced by the prorated deduction. So, second deduction is siya. First deduction is mortgage paid. Second deduction is prorated deduction for losses, indebtedness taxes, and transfer for public purpose only. Allocable to property previously taxed are as follows. So, ito niya siya. So, second deduction is the amount of the multiplier. So the multiplier is the losses, indebtedness taxes, or unpaid mortgage plus transfer for public use, no? Times multiplier nimo sa initial basis over gross estate. So the initial basis, that's actually the value taken less mortgage paid, diba? Over gross estate times the multiplier or yung deductions, yung portion deductible. So the initial basis minus the second deduction, or the prorated deduction, is actually the final basis. Then you need to determine the interval between the death of the present decedent and death of prior decedent, no? Or if the property was acquired by inheritance, or death of the present decedent and the date of gift, if the property was acquired by donation, to find applicable percentage of vanishing deduction. So, i-determine mo ang years, then mag-identify ka kung saan ang rate ang gamiton. So, the final basis, multiply by percentage of the vanishing deduction to arrive at the vanishing deduction. Okay? So, we have here medyo short problem related to vanishing deduction. So, Mr. Y died single, leaving properties he inherited 2.5 years ago with the current fair market value of 800,000. The property was inherited when it was worth 1 million and had an 850,000 unpaid mortgage. Mr. Y paid 550,000 until his death. Other properties of Mr. Y had a fair market value of 1.2 million. So at the time of his death, so the losses, taxes, and transfer public use, excluding the unpaid mortgage, totaled 140,000. So medical expenses totaled 300,000. So how much was the vanishing deduction? Okay. So let's determine first the multiplier. No, so the multiplier, diba, is yung losses, taxes, indebtedness plus unpaid mortgage. No, that's actually 140,000. No. Losses, taxes, and transfer for public use, but it excludes the unpaid mortgage. So, unpaid mortgage mo, we have 850,000, na unpaid mortgage, pagka-receive mo sa property, tas nakabayad na makakaman 50,000, then 300,000 na yung unpaid mortgage. So you have a total multiplier of 440,000. And, di ba, the first thing na himuon mo is to compute for the value taken. To determine the value taken. Is whichever is lower between the fair market value at the time of transfer, that's actually 1 million versus fair market value at the time of death of 800, whichever is lower. So we have the lower na 800,000, the fair market value at the time of transfer. And then, di ba, we'll deduct mortgage paid to determine the initial basis. So the mortgage paid is 550,000. So we have initial basis of 250,000. Then yung second deduction, we have per rata between the initial basis of 250 divide 2 million. So, saan galing yung 2 million? 2 million is actually the gross estate. No? So, then we have here fair market value of other property, no, of 1.2 million plus yung fair market value of the property na subject for valuation deduction. But that's fair market value at time of death. So we have 2 million as our gross estate. 250 na initial basis offer 2 million na gross estate times the multiplier na to. We have 55,000 as our second deduction. So final basis would be 125%. And since 2 to 3 years ito, kasi 2.5 years, so if you'll check the rate, 2 to 3 years is 60%. So, yan. You have vanishing deduction of 117,000. Okay? So after vanishing deduction, so we have special deductions now. So we have standard deduction of 5 million. So before sa train law, ang standard deduction is only 1 million. But after train law, effective January 1, 2018, the standard deduction is 5 million. Also, we have family home. So these are the family home is a dwelling house where a person and his family reside and the land in which is situated. This is the land and the building. So the value to be included in a gross state, no? So dapat ang family home dapat for it to be deductible dapat situated siya in the Philippines, no? Yan. So that, and then the valuation niya, diba, is fair market value or zonal value assessed by whichever is higher, no? So the current fair market value or zonal value of the family home, whichever is higher, shall be included in the gross state of the decedent. Then yung ano niya, valuation, of course, at the time of death. So condition, so the decedent must have died on or after July 8, 1992. The total value of the family home must be included in the gross state of the decedent. So that's why dapat situated siya in the Philippines. The family home must be the actual residence and decedent and his family at the time of death as certified by the barangay captain, no? Where the family home is situated. So, may maximum tayo na deduction. We have 10 million. No? Deductions can exceed the fair market value or total value of the family home as included in the gross state but not exceeding 10 million. So, meaning to say, ang pag exclusive ang property, TI, fair market value of the property versus 10 million, whichever is lower. So, say, for example, if you do have 12 million na property fair market value but allowed deduction is only 10 million, you'll deduct lang 10 million. Okay? So, it is a deduction for the common properties or separate properties of the decedent as the case may be. No? So, yan. We also have amounts received by heirs under, let's have an example pala muna with the family home. No? Ito. So, a decedent was married at the time of death under the system of conjugal partnership means. Among the properties in a gross state were land, no, inherited before the marriage, exclusive property siya at 5 million. Family home by the spouses on the inherited land, this is common property, 4 million. So, deduction for family home is, so since ang land exclusive, 5 million. Yung family home, mas, ang imuha lang manggong taksan is ang share lang sa spouse, no? Dapat pag conjugal, i-divide mo siya og 2, no? So you have 2 million. So total deduction for family home is 10 million, no? But if the entire property is exclusive, you'll deduct 9 million. It's just that the family home ang good is common. So divide mo og 2. So deductible family home is 7 million. Okay, so next we have amounts received by heirs under RA 417. This pertaining to the benefits granted and received by the heirs of the decedent from his employer as a consequence of his separation or service to the death of the decedent. So dapat lang, for you to claim RA 417, the amount shall be included in the gross state of the decedent. Okay? Next, lastly, we have the share of the surviving spouse. So, ito yung deduction na wala kay unmarried. No? Na kay married as a death. Okay? The share of surviving spouse in the conjugal or community property as diminished by the obligations properly chargeable to the conjugal shall be deducted from the gross estate. So, we have common properties. That's why we need to separate exclusive and common. No? Kasi we have shared the surviving spouse. So, yung common properties are part of the conjugal property. Less common deduction, no? Yan. You have the net common properties before deductions. After deduction siguro, no? Times 50% or divide 2 to get the share of the surviving spouse, no? Yan siya. Okay, so that ends the deduction part. So our third video would be the computation of the state tax, net taxable estate and state tax of an unmarried resident and a married resident. So thank you.